Stagnation. In the face of four walls, there was little else to do but that. The mind, left to wander through its endless expanses, could not comprehend the banality of its newfound environment. No. Embittered by the cold gales that fell upon my home, I was stuck, fixed in place, unmoving and unchanging. I was subject to the whims of time and all that they contained. And as day blurred into night, and as the sky became gray, words became strange, and dreams ever stranger. Now, I drifted between the rational and the absurd as my writing became increasingly bizarre, the product of a feverish, sleep-deprived mind. For it was in those wee hours between twilight and dawn when stories, tales of boundless deserts, and enigmatic collectives began to form in my mind. Now, I struggled to define, to encapsulate what it was that I was talking about, what it was exactly that I was trying to convey. The coherency and logic that had once come to me with ease had now left. And in its place, I lacked clarity. For I devised a project, one devoid of meaning nor direction, a collection of stories that held no cohesive purpose, writing for the sake of writing. Now, I knew not where this would lead, nor where it came from, for I was bound to this cycle of ceaseless production, mechanical creativity, the fluidity of the human mind confined to a daily routine, lacking in even a moment's relief. Without definition, words were nothing more than symbols on a page. Without meaning, what was I really doing? I was a being of reason, fact, governed by logic and rational thought. Yet elements of this abstract incoherency continued to elude me. For it was through my very own designs that I had prohibited the formulation of ideas. Constricted, constrained, I was unable to think, to create. The written word of which had once solicited a sense of great joy had now been violated in an incomparable sense. The industrialization of creativity had affected every fiber of my works. Now, the product of a system that knew no passion. And so, I wished to stop, to bring these machinations to a grinding halt, but yet I found myself entirely subservient to the will of the clock. And as deadlines were applied, the inevitability of time marching on in its insidious consistency had deprived me of one of the few things I found solace in. And so I contemplated, changing, adapting, uprooting all that I had created, but yet I couldn't. I had to persist, carry through with the task that I had set for myself. And so, I attempted to engrave my work with the same disconnection I felt, the same sense of apathy, incoherency, and incommunicable frustration. But ultimately, what I had failed to realize was that it was all me. The clarity that I upheld, the logic that I mandated, was fundamentally present in every aspect of my works. It was clear. It was concise. Most of all, it was manageable. It was the final manifestation of what I thought art must be. Calculable, quantified, exact. A professional field of consistency and order lacking in the whimsy that had infested every aspect of its modern-day being. But unbeknownst to myself, in writing I had found a sense of fulfillment in the absurd, satisfaction in the abstract. It was exempt from the logic that defined the remainder of myself. Now, my works were, in essence, pseudo-biographical, reflections of the states in which I existed. And as my chosen mode of a creative expression, they reflected my own thoughts, sentiments, qualities, struggles. The following is an excerpt from one of these stories. My typewriter lay before me, black keys glistening under the lamplight, its lacquered, polished appearance reflecting its lack of use. I leaned forward, and a single word, "the," materialized on the page, its definitive presence, further contrasting the absence of its fellow words, mocked me as I rubbed my eyes. Now, I had come to the distinct conclusion that I was in the professional, emotional, and creative equivalent of the doldrums. I was aimless. I was powerless. I was an absent-minded observer just going through the motions. And such a revelation tormented me so, but ultimately I did nothing. A curious paradox, a being aware of its own ineptitude and inaction, yet lacking in the motivation to counter. You know, in my endeavors to produce something of significance, to impose logic upon my works, I disrupted this delicate equilibrium between creator and creation. And the absurdism that had once been confined to my writing alone spilled over, influencing every aspect of my being. For it was a project to counter all that I despise, this culture where meaning was implied when meaning clearly wasn't there. A culture of lofty ideas and conceptualizations possessing neither definition nor reason. Artists so absorbed within their own elaborate works that they simply couldn't produce anything of real worth. And now, the irony of what had occurred has not escaped me. In an endeavor to reject something, I had become embroiled in it. I became fluent in the absurd, the abstract, a language I could now understand. Conventions, in this grand era of conformity, were enticing, to say the least. Stricken of the liberties with which we once enjoyed, normal became the subject of intense desire. I will now share with you all another excerpt from one of my stories. I hope you'll enjoy it. The rain pelted against my umbrella, its fragile surface. Belaying the miserable drizzle of a few minutes prior. A sea of black umbrellas moved as a collective, a heaving mass of shivering bodies, pressed together in a reluctant union. Some, tried to part the crowd in a vain attempt to gain refuge from the grand deluge. But most had accepted the wet reality of their situation, resigned to the flow of the horde. I was primarily the latter, regrettably confined to the whims of that crowd. No easy thing to accept, but I was able to do it for quite some time. I went with the flow of things, drifting through streets with no true conception of my direction. The faces of citygoers had taken on a profound meaning in that time. Enigmatic beings passing in anonymity, their true natures obscured. For it was in this void of my understanding that they became canvases, entities upon which my own ideas and conceptions could be projected. And so I inscribed all that I saw and heard, the intricacies of human behavior, distilled, detailed. For the role of the quiet observer suited me well. Now, we so often see the Creator as wielding supreme authority over their creation. But yet, as much as my work had begun to reflect my mind had begun to reflect my works. I began to perceive the inherent chaos in all things, the contours of water flowing since time immemorial, the tangibility of spaces between people, between places, words unsaid and things unseen, the sound of rain and its soothing connotations. Ill-explained, undefined, but yet I ask, did they need to be? Notions and conceptions born of the smallest of hours, fluid forces in the dark, specters, shifting, morphing. For the unseen hand of all that I created had altered me in ways I couldn't even explain. I discovered that the relationship between artists and their art is not one-sided. Rather, both are involved in a vibrant exchange of ideas and influences, a dynamic interplay of which few rivals. Equal in their power, with true dominion held by neither. Thank you. Oh, before I go, I'd like to thank Ibu Harry and Pak Sean for supporting us for this year. And also, we've got some great greenstones today, so yeah, they're really awesome stuff. Yeah, thanks.